Piracy as sea robbery has existed since time immemorial, or, to be more precise, it appeared simultaneously with maritime trade. Of course, it reached its romanticized by many writers heyday after the discovery of the West Indies and the beginning of transatlantic voyages with the mass export of treasures of the New World to Europe. But from the robbery of ships and coastal villages, the inhabitants of the ancient world suffered no less than their distant descendants many centuries later. Actually, the very word, pirate, is Latin, and it goes back to the ancient Greek for trying one's luck. Especially in the ancient world where famous Phoenician pirates quite successfully combined robbery with trade. They traded where they did not consider themselves strong enough to engage in robbery. For their exploits in the field of piracy, Phoenicians even honored lines in Homer's Odyssey. Although from the time of Homer to the campaigns of Gnaeus Pompey the Great, the situation with pirates in the Mediterranean has not changed fundamentally. After the fall of the maritime powers, Carthage and Corinth, which largely contained the forces of pirates, maritime robbery in the area from the Middle East to Spain began to acquire a threatening scale. And the pirates themselves over time revised and changed their tactics. While initially they used light, fast, and maneuverable vessels for surprise attacks, pirates began to build larger and heavier ships as they felt power and impunity. Using large triremes and biremes, they attacked not single ships, but large merchant caravans and coastal towns. While the Roman Senate was busy with ongoing wars with neighboring tribes and civil conflict in Rome itself, pirates were in full force near the Italian coast. At one time they were captured even the young Julius Caesar. Maritime robbery reached its height after the king of Antiquity, Mithridates VI, made an alliance with the Cilician pirates to oppose Rome, meaning that the pirates were not only a military but also a political force. After Mithridates' defeat in the war with Rome, the pirates finally became an uncontrollable force, and Cilicia, home to many of them, became an independent pirate state. Completely brazen brigands allowed themselves not only to flaunt their looted wealth, there were no gilded masts even on the ships of mighty Carthage, but also began to attack temples and shrines, which was completely unacceptable by the standards of the ancient world. Some pirate leaders became so proud that they considered themselves equal to Greek kings and called the booty spoils of war. As a result, the Senate had to be distracted from conflicts with the Iberians and Gauls. The government of the Republic realized near the borders of the state appeared a force claiming political importance, and therefore able to challenge Rome. Many pirates settled on the island of Sicily, having built a fortified base near Syracuse. From there they made lightning raids on the coast of Italy. Roman trade routes were jeopardized, because of which the capital of the Republic faced critical interruptions in the supply of grain. Moreover, the pirates were not Carthage, which could come and destroy. There were numerous scattered groups operating throughout the Mediterranean basin, which seriously hampered any attempts to actively counteract. More than 400 seaside towns were under pirate rule, and the fleet numbered thousands of ships. To stop the outrages of sea robbers, the Senate was obliged to organize, and most importantly, to finance a major maritime expedition. However, the senators were constantly busy with internal problems of Rome, which had to be solved in turn. To pirates' turn came only after the victory over the rebellious slaves led by Spartacus. Tribune Aulus Gabinius, a loyal friend of Gnaeus Pompey, proposed a special law to combat pirates. According to the legislative project, the Senate appointed at the head of the anti-piracy expedition one of the generals, obliged to fight at sea. The commander of the Roman fleet was granted extraordinary powers with the traditional wording, "Let the consuls take measures so that the state does not suffer damage." That is, the powers were actually dictatorial. The aim was to establish complete control over the Mediterranean Sea, including coastal areas on land. A huge budget was envisioned for the creation and maintenance of a capable navy and supporting army. The bill took a long time to pass, and the Senate had reason to worry, after a 7-year war in Spain with the former Roman commander Quintus Sertorius, who had seceded from Rome and tried to establish his own state beyond the Pyrenees. It was to be expected that an authorized military commander would also refuse to disband the army. Control of the sea lanes would have made him virtually invincible. Nevertheless, the law was pushed through by a narrow margin, and command was given to Gnaeus Pompey, named the Great for his past victories. Pompey had a good reputation and would hardly dare to oppose the Senate and the people of Rome. The army, with which Pompey entered the difficult war with the pirates, included 500 ships, 120,000 legionaries and 5,000 horsemen. It was obvious that the usual Roman tactics of warfare will not be effective against sea robbers, because the commander has long studied the experience of predecessors. Earlier with piracy successfully fought the Carthaginians and Greek polis. The most sensible strategy. He considered the most common-sense strategy as a widespread simultaneous attack on pirate bases, in order to prevent the unification of forces robbers and not let them leave. Pompey conventionally divided the Mediterranean into several sectors, in each of which was to command one of his legates with the powers of praetor. Thus, in case of retreat of pirates in the neighboring sector, they instantly fell into the hands of another Roman detachment. Pompey himself patrolled the Tyrrhenian Sea, the triangle between Italy, Sardinia and Sicily, that is, the closest to the capital area. It was obvious that the restoration of uninterrupted supply of bread to Rome will cause the greatest gratitude of citizens, which could not ignore the ambitious commander. The entire Mediterranean Sea was under the continuous control of the Roman fleet. In each sector there were 3 or 4 dozen ships. The main task of the mobile detachment was to protect its territory, as well as cleaning up the coasts and islands, supervision of trade routes and intercept the fleeing enemy. In a separate, reserve, detachment Pompey allocated about 60 ships with selected crews to build up forces in a weak sector if necessary. Legates arrived at the shores of their assigned territories. The operation began. Pompey himself personally inspected all the areas and coordinated the activities of the units. First of all, he went on a 40-day expedition to the western Mediterranean, where he personally checked the condition and organization of his flotillas. In the same 40 days, he met at the next inspection of the eastern part of the water area. Thus, in less than 3 months was built a system of military administrative control over the entire Mediterranean Sea and the movement of merchant caravans. The first result was not long in coming. The rapid restoration of trade and supplies to the capital was admired both by the people, already ready to revolt because of the sharp rise in the price of food, and by the Roman nobility. Reduction of prices in the markets highly raised the prestige of Pompey, which, however, was part of his plans. He wanted to later participate in the consular elections. The blow was so sudden and massive that the pirate associations were unable to build any serious defense. At first they wanted to break the fleet of Pompey in a general battle, and his own capture for a huge ransom, but the coherence and efficiency of actions of the Roman commander threw them into panic. Pirates began to lift sieges from the cities and go under the protection of their own bases and harbors. The main trade routes were protected by the Roman fleet with large detachments of legionnaires on ships. It became impossible to go to sea. Pompey's commanders did not sit idle, constantly attacking pirate units and landing troops in the areas of robber nests. Within a few weeks, the pirate activity in the central and western Mediterranean completely nullified. Pompey and his subordinates acted extremely tough and ruthless. Surviving pirates preferred to hide in secluded places and do not fall under the attack of the Roman fleet. It is worth noting that the suspicious Senate did not leave attempts to put sticks in the wheels of their own commanders. Consuls were afraid of both excessive strengthening of Pompey and his popularity among the people. One of the consuls even ordered the disbandment of the fleet, and this after the grandiose successes at sea. However, Pompey left his ships for a while, personally arrived in Rome and settled the conflict with the Senate, vowing that he would disband the army at the end of the operation. A curious episode occurred during Pompey's stay off the coast of Greece. Caught by the Roman fleet, pirate ship preferred to surrender to the mercy of the great commander. Pompey perfectly understood that he must be firm, but merciful, because he spared the pirates, requisitioning ships and weapons, but released the crews. After that, many pirates, along with their families, began to surrender en masse to Pompey personally, and he with their help to find the robbers who did not intend to surrender. Anyone who resisted, immediately destroyed. If the western and central Mediterranean became calm quickly enough, the east was still suffering from pirates. Pirate state, Cilicia, remained a brigand fiefdom, and surrender Cilicians were not going to surrender. Therefore, the next step of Pompey in his campaign was obvious: the war with the pirates in the east. The commander very thoroughly prepared for the campaign in Cilicia. In addition to a landing force of infantry and cavalry, he prepared dozens of siege and assault vehicles to take fortresses. He had no doubt that the war would be long and difficult. Pompey's campaign for many pirates was also a personal insult, because they considered themselves not just brigands and Cilician despots, equal to the kings of Greece. Several pirate commanders decided to give the Romans a fight not far from their capital, Corcysium. Details of this battle in the historical chronicles have not survived, but it is known that the enemies of Rome were defeated by a superbly trained Roman army. The remaining pirates, impressed by the power of the legions, preferred to save their lives. A wave of surrenders began. The formidable stronghold of sea robbers, who for decades held in fear of the Mediterranean Sea, fell at the feet of the Roman commander. More than 120 cities, ports and fortresses recognized the power of Rome. 10,000 pirates were either killed in battle or surrendered to captivity. Were taken rich trophies. The Romans received ships, weapons, food, looted earlier treasures and slaves. With the pirates themselves, Pompey did cruel but fair. The most vicious robbers and leaders were executed. The rest were forgiven. We should not forget that many joined the ranks of pirates not willingly, but due to various circumstances. For example, after the plundering of coastal villages by the same pirates. Often people had to engage in sea robbery to get a livelihood. Pompey generously forgave them and gave them land. Forgiven pirates settled in Cilicia, emptied after the wars with Mithridates. During the campaign there was a very unpleasant incident. One of the Roman commanders, Metellus, even before Pompey was given emergency powers, was sent to Crete to destroy the pirates' base. The siege dragged on. After Pompey's victory in Cilicia, the inhabitants of Crete sent messengers to the commander asking him to protect them from the Roman commander Metellus. Since the area of Crete was controlled personally by Pompey, it turned out that Metellus besieged the Roman island inhabited by pirates. Pompey was in a completely stupid situation, because he could stand up for the enemies of Rome, and even deprive Metellus of the triumph. This story ended well. Metellus captured Crete after a long siege. The war with the pirates was completed quickly and successfully. The key to success was not so much a preponderance of forces in favor of the Romans, but an undoubted tactical and strategic superiority and excellent organization. It was in the fight against the pirates that Pompey fully revealed his talent as a military leader.